With James Gunn and Peter Safran promising a world of better interconnected content with the DC Universe that at this point is still 2 years away from actually releasing, many are looking at the last 7 DCEU box office bombs and wondering if the DCU can recover. A great article was recently put out by The Hollywood Reporter that simply asked, where have all the DC fans gone? So I'm going to look at this article and really ask the question, no really, where have all the DC fans gone? So I would suggest if you're interested in the subject here to go read the article, but this has been something that's been discussed by a lot of people. And there is a crudely made meme out there that really got to the point of this sometime last year around the release of Black Adam. And you guys have probably seen a variation of this: DC fans in the internet, DC fans in the theater. And we've pretty much learned that outside of the Batman and the Joker, this has literally been the response from DC fans in regards to the DC universe. So why is this? Well, let's look at this realistically. One of the most successful DC films of all time, Joker, was huge specifically because of the push for marketing behind it, how they angled it, and of course, it's a Batman character and one of the most recognizable pop culture icons of all time. On the other hand, you had Matt Reeves' The Batman, which is following a similar template to what Chris Nolan did with his Batman films, which is taking the angle of a realistic Batman, placing him into the world and seeing what happens. Again, 2 projects that are based in a real-world setting that are literally Batman projects succeeded. But if we look at the history of DC characters on film, we realize that a lot of times, many of these projects are literally considered just barely profitable or outright bombs. Remember Batman Begins? That is a box office bomb. Superman Returns was more profitable than Batman Begins. It was only The Dark Knight that turned it around. But again, the Batman factor is there, and then we look at the start of the DCEU, and we realize that there was a lot of hype for a real competitor to the MCU. Quickly, once the fans saw that it wasn't what they wanted, all of this goodwill went away. And by the time that Justice League came out, the franchise was more or less dead. Now, we can blame the studio from going away from Zack Snyder's vision, or we can blame Zack Snyder's vision. I think both are equal to blame, and I'm not going to say one over the other is the correct choice or the wrong choice. There's equal blame on both parts. One party did not want to base their characters and the stories on the comics and instead wanted to go way darker than they're supposed to be. The other party wanted it to be more like the MCU, and well, the visions clashed. What really gets to me about this whole situation is that when you really think about it, and you ask yourself the question, where have all the DC fans gone? I think you really got to take a step back and analyze it from a sort of distant viewpoint and ask yourself, has DC Comics built DC fans, or have they, due to the success of Batman, built Batman fans and all the other characters are just sort of in the mix and they're Batman's friends? Because that's the only real thing that I can think of and that I can point to in regards to anybody asking this question and say that I don't think DC Comics has fostered a DC fan base. And I think by them continuing to focus solely on Batman, and when they hit hard times, Batman characters, Batman everywhere, they have literally made DC the Batman brand, which I know that makes sense because DC stands for Detective Comics. And again, Detective Comics is primarily famous because of Batman. So it's kind of a almost poetic way to look at it if you really think about it. And the one thing that sticks out to me with the question of where have all the DC fans gone that I don't see many people tackling is the angle of how the MCU was able to succeed. They looked at the characters they had, which were B-list characters, make no mistake about it. No matter what anybody tells you today about how Captain America or Iron Man are their favorite characters, when those movies came out, they did not have that backing. Iron Man was a B-list character. Captain America was B-list at best. And you can tell with the box office that all the fans that went and saw the last Captain America film and The Winter Soldier were not there for the first one. The box office is right there, but Marvel Studios committed to it and fostered a fan base that grew. DC, what have we seen that they've done to alienate fans? Put out a film, knee-jerk reaction, pivot hard. The next film, pivot even harder. The film after that, pivot even harder. They responded to the feedback and to what they think they should do, but they also ignored vocal fans who are saying they want you to double down on the directors, but also ignore the fans that are saying we don't want it to be the MCU, we want it to be DC Comics. Come to live action. And I think this is really the angle you got to take on this question. Are there DC fans, or are there Batman fans that want to see him primarily in the spotlight, and if other characters show up, sure, it's good enough, but they don't care about the other characters because they have no interest in them. Because DC did a fine job of throwing these characters under the bus. How many decades did they waste Shazam because once they bought him and bought out the competition, literally threw him away so they could put Superman over? Decades worth of this. Blue Beetle? They've never had Blue Beetle at the forefront of many popular things, so it's not a surprise that the film bombed. Black Adam, well, evil Shazam, so there's the question of what you should have done. And then you look at some more characters recently that have failed, and you look at the ones that succeeded. People are going to bring up the Suicide Squad. Why was that a failure when Suicide Squad was a success? You can look at the angle of the pandemic, and I would say yes, but also, we saw that right around that time, after the release of Justice League, people's literal fandom for DC was over. Justice League was a failure. It doesn't matter what the Snyder Cut did, people were out the door. They did not get a concrete answer, or even a decent answer, or subpar answer, or anything to the Avengers. Their brand was over. They were out. They committed years. There was no course correct. The course correct was another terrible sidestep, and it was over for them. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens next and how James Gunn and Safran respond. But I think it is a valid question. Where have all the DC fans gone? And also, will they be back? And is it too late? Is it too late for this brand to actually recover? Like, think about it this way. Phase 4, Marvel has stumbled a couple of times, but they've still found huge box office hits, success, and views on Disney+. DC, on the other hand, has succeeded with 2 unconnected films, completely disconnected from the DC bigger universe, that are standalone. And on the other hand, all their connected universe films have flopped. And with a half measure to half reboot and keep half of the actors, what message are you sending? So, I am worried. And I want to see if the DC fans are going to show up, or are they just going to turn their back on it because they don't trust what was already done, and they don't want to get invested again in a brand that could potentially fail them again.